Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How is everyone?
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. I really like that last slide, right? It really got you to reflect on, like, is this my relationship? Do we have this type of trust? Alhamdulillah. So my topic today is on in-laws. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. ربنا زدنا علما. So my name is Saadia Z Yunus. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I live on Long Island, New York. I have 4 kids, alhamdulillah, ages 13, 12, 6, and 2. And I've been living with my in-laws for 16 years. So I have my being a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'll be putting that into this as well. Inshallah, I've been working with couples for just about 8, 9 years. Couples, families, individuals. So, inshallah, bringing that into, and then my personal experience with in-laws as well. And I don't think any of my in-laws are in here, so we're good. Okay. Okay, so marriage, we know, takes a lot of work. It's not easy. It doesn't come naturally. It's not fairy tales. It's not something that just flows. It takes a lot of work. It's interesting because my 13-year-old daughter, we were driving here the other day, and she was saying, like, I want your marriage, meaning yours and my dad's. Alhamdulillah, she sees it that way, but I told her it didn't start this way, right? Alhamdulillah, we're 16 years in, but it didn't start off so great, right? It took a lot of work and struggle and individual as well as collective growth. And it's still a struggle every day because you're still trying to make things work, right, with each other. So marriage already takes a lot of work. And then we throw in a curveball and oftentimes the stress and the difficulty and the misunderstandings and the miscommunication when it comes to in-laws. So I want to get an idea of my audience because we have an amazing, a large number here. So raise your hand if you are an in-law, and that being sister-in-law, brother-in-law, mother-in-law, father-in-law. Raise your hand if you are an in-law. Okay. All right. That's a lot of people. And then what about if you have in-laws? Raise your hand. Okay. A lot of people too. Okay. So this is great because I want to also kind of talk from both sides. Being an in-law as well as, I know the topic is dealing with in-laws and I will focus on that more, but it's also about applying that as being in-laws. And it's not only the mother-in-law, right? Sometimes we have that viewpoint or that negative view or that perception of like the evil mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law, and then mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law can never get along. But it expands to sisters-in-law, brothers-in-law, uncles and grandmothers-in-law. So just keeping all of this in mind, marriage already takes a lot of work. The key is to prioritize the marriage. That is the key in getting through all of the difficulties that are in the marriage itself, as well as in-laws. What happens is, and believe me, I can't cover every single example because we have so many different cultures, we have so many different cultural views, a way that a certain culture sees the in-laws, right? We have a lot of cultures in which they're given a very high status, particularly the man's family. Am I right? Okay, so there's that very high status of like, there's certain expectations. And there are individual expectations, there's expectations within the family and within the culture. So the key is to prioritize the marriage. And I'm speaking from a family therapist perspective as well, because when there is priority based on decision making, or where we're going to travel to, or how we raise the kids, any of these things and so much more, even what you wear, when that's given to the in-laws, then it brings a lot of stress, external stress, on the couple. And the couple is already struggling. We're trying to figure each other out, and what our love languages are, and what our languages of apologies are, and what our fighting style is. And if you don't know those three, I would definitely recommend looking those up and taking those quizzes. So you're still trying to figure each other out, and there's these external factors that are coming in and causing even more stress. You can get through that when your marital bond is chosen as the priority. You strengthen each other, you focus on each other, and you strengthen that so you can deal with those external factors in a better way. And the idea really is to have these conversations before you get married. So that's why I'm a huge advocate for premarital counseling, because so many of the couples who come in for therapy, there are things that they could have expected, not necessarily prevented, right? Because there's all kinds of issues and problems that are going to come up anyways, but there's so many things that they could have prepared for, or maybe prevented, right? Because they would have had those discussions. And if you're married already, it's never too late. You can always go to therapy to figure those things out. It's not just for people who are about to get a divorce. Therapy is not just for people who can't figure anything else out. Too many Muslim couples in particular, use therapy as a last resort. And that's the mistake that we make as a community. It's really got to be the first line of defense. Because when you go, that's when you're going to figure out the skills, you're going to figure out something that you're not seeing. Because the marriage is about two individuals really trying to make it work, and sometimes you can be at odds with each other. You think that you're right, and it becomes, I'm right. No, I'm right. I think I'm right. No, I'm right. And so there's no middle ground of coming to that understanding. So I have some tips, so try to do that before you get married. The premarital counseling, being proactive instead of reactive. Too often we're reactive. When something happens, then I'll deal with it then. When we're having trouble and problems and there's a fight with the mother-in-law, then we'll deal with it then. Discuss scenarios beforehand. Even now, talk about them. Say, what if this happens? Or what if your mom says this and I don't want to deal with her? Or what if your dad says this and it hurts my feelings? Or I just don't want to be in their presence anymore. How are we going to deal with this as a couple? It shouldn't be where one person is just, oh, you're just on my own. That's my mom. You just have to deal with her. It should be where we are a team. As a husband and wife, we're a team. We have each other's back. We're there for each other, and you help us get through it. So I have some tips in dealing with in-laws. Number one is to know yourself and know them. I put this together even though knowing yourself is so essential. What triggers you? What irritates you? What makes you angry? What is something that you just won't deal with? Okay, there's some things that I'll tolerate, right? Because for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I want to have a good relationship with my in-laws. I want to respect them as elders, as the ones who have wisdom and advice for me and experience, right? All of that good stuff. Treating them with ihsan, treating them with excellence, because what I want to receive, I'm going to give. So all of that I'm hoping is a given, and I'm probably going to be focusing more on issues and problems and how to deal with them, because we all know the Islamic values of respecting our elders and taking care of them and having a good relationship with them, right? So know yourself. What is something that you're willing to deal with, you're willing to just struggle through, and other things you're not? That, okay, I can handle your mom's comments, I can handle your sister's comments, but when it comes to expecting me to not go visit my friends when they have something going on or when they're in town, that's not something that I feel is okay. If I've already made plans with my friends, they'll just have to expect me to not be there. So it's about, again, knowing what is something that you're willing to deal with. Know them. Take the time to get to know them. What are their personalities? What are their backgrounds? Oftentimes there are a lot of marriages, in different cultures, or different cultural backgrounds. Even though we may be Muslim, right, all of us, and there are marriages where non-Muslims are there as well. So there's so many different backgrounds. But even being Muslim, there's so many different ways that we practice the deen. So getting to know them and how they do things, and giving them that space of being interested in letting them know that you are interested in them and how they do things. So a lot of times, like I said, there are cultural ideas that they're ingrained within people. That a mother-in-law, for example, may expect her daughter-in-law to stay at home and to cook and to serve, and that's one example. But we have to really understand that beforehand. What are these deeper issues that are involved? Is there power and control? Are there power and control issues happening here? And how do I not let that affect my marriage? I'll let you know that probably every single one of the couples who've come into my office, there's been some issue or some argument or something related to in-laws. It's more of a problem than you think. Every single couple. And oftentimes it's where there are expectations and that they weren't discussed beforehand. The husband is like, no, eventually we're gonna move in with my parents. And she's like, what? I had no idea that was on the table. That's not something I'm willing to do. And now they're in therapy wondering if they should stay together because of the obligation to their parents seems to be more important than the relationship. So what is that priority there? And what are those, something that I'm willing to kind of deal with and go through for the marriage, and others that I'm just not. And that's something to discuss beforehand, before the issue arises. So it's also about discussing your role in relation to the in-laws. It's an adult to adult. A lot of parents have trouble with this. It's not just about in-laws, it's our own parents as well. About transitioning the relationship with their child from, baby to toddler to little kid to preteen to teenager to now adult. So many parents will treat their adult child like a little kid still. And so because we don't make that transition, now that little kid or your little baby boy or your little baby girl is now married, and you think you can treat their spouse the same way, like as your little kid. And it's important for you as husband and wife to discuss that with each other. That may be your relationship with your mother, or that may be your relationship with your father, but I won't allow that to be mine. And so again, having these important conversations. Number 2 is to remove the competition. Romantic love and parental love is completely different. So why is there this competition and this struggle about spending time or doing things for her? You did that for your mother, but not for me. Or, this pull back and forth of time and attention and love. It's for us to separate those. Encourage your spouse to spend time with their parents or their siblings. Encourage your spouse to give money to their parents or their siblings. And again, it's about discussing those things, finding what's acceptable and what's not. Number 3, and this is the most important thing, and I mentioned that in the beginning, is really to sync up with your spouse. I read a quote, it said, love your spouse more than you dislike your in-laws. So it's really about what's more important. There are some relationships in which they're constantly fighting about the in-laws. Constantly fighting. And it's what Gottman, the relationship expert, he calls it a perpetual problem. And a perpetual problem is not one that you're going to solve. So why are you fighting about it every single day? Every single day, every time it comes up, there's a fight. What does he say to do? What does Gottman say to do? Is to take a step back, recognize that this is a perpetual problem, and to realize that it's not going to be solved. It's a difficult position as a woman when your husband has issues with your parents, because they're your parents. It's difficult to hear that, for them to say, oh, your mother did this and your brother did this, and it's difficult, but it's about discussing how to make that a safe space. That I understand that my parents frustrate you, and it's difficult for me to hear that, but I want to also allow you a safe space with me to discuss those issues and problems and frustrations. And the same going the other way. As a man, it's difficult to hear your wife say harsh things about your parents. They're your parents, or a sister, or a brother, or whoever. But it's essential for your marriage to discuss and to figure out how your wife can still say those things in a way that doesn't sting so much, but also gives her that safe space to discuss it. And this is what I do with couples. I help them to figure those difficult conversations out and how to come up with certain phrases for example, when you're too heated up, you know, you're both just way too overworked, you have, high physiological arousal, and in that case, you're not even able to think straight, right? Because we know that when you have this physiological arousal, your body is worked up, and it shows up in different ways in different people, whether that's sweaty hands or your heart is racing, and basically it sends a signal to the brain that you're in fight or flight mode. And so now you're standing in front of your spouse in fight or flight mode, like they're a lion or a tiger that you have to protect yourself from. So are you going to understand each other? No, you're going to be at a disadvantage. So you want to make sure you're calm and relaxed so that you're able to listen to each other. So I help couples come up with their phrase or word or signal so that they both calm each other down. So syncing up with your spouse. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 187, how the husband and wife are garments for each other. And I've done a talk on this in which I came up with like 6 characteristics that falls under, and definitely trust is one of them. But when it comes to the in-laws, it's essential that we do that for each other as well. That you will hide your spouse's flaws. You will cover them. You will try to make this relationship work. Because we know that shaitan running through us, right? Running through our veins, running through us like blood. He wants marriages to break. And the in-laws, finances, the opposite gender, talking to somebody at work a little too flirtatiously, etc., etc. Those are just 3 of the examples that he'll use to get at you. So it's recognizing those weaknesses. But as garments for one another, we protect each other, we're there for each other. It's not where somebody feels alone in their struggle. So what you want to do is strengthen your marriage to withstand external factors. Whatever those external factors are, and one of them being in-laws. Others may be another difficult relationship, a friendship, or finances, or an illness, or stress, or whatever else it is. Number 4 is recognize together when things become intrusive or beyond the scope of what is okay. Recognize it together. Have those conversations together. It's not about just one person saying, I can't stand your mother anymore, or I won't allow your father to treat me this way anymore. Try to come up with that together. Try to recognize that. Try to see your parents and your siblings in the way that they're treating your spouse. Maybe if they said the same thing to you, you wouldn't care. You'd let it go. Maybe if they were like, oh, that outfit does not look good on you. It's a little too tight. For you, maybe it's like, no big deal. It's my mom. That's my dad. I've been hearing that forever. Maybe for your spouse, it's not okay to be told that the outfit doesn't really fit right or doesn't really look right on them. So recognizing when that's happening. Is it intrusive? And it depends on the person. Examples are disciplining your kids, offering cooking advice, telling you how to manage your money, providing decorating tips, giving constructive criticism on your life, stopping by unannounced, changing plans that have already been made. Maybe for one spouse, it's not a big deal. Oh, I don't mind if my parents just drop by unannounced. But for your spouse, it's not okay. It's intrusive, it's coming into your space, maybe you're not ready the way that you like to be. So if it's intrusive for one person, the other spouse, pay attention to that and be open to understanding that and have your spouse's back. Because they're your parents, you know how to deal with them. And so it's trying to help your spouse navigate that as well. Number 5 is communication, communication, communication between the two of you. So with each other, listen to each other no matter how difficult it is. And I talked about the safe space before. As a spouse, you want to provide this safe space for your spouse to be able to talk about anything. And that's how that communication will flow without difficulty or without those awkward silences. So use I statements, right? This is a whole conversation on itself, is the way that we communicate with each other. Instead of, why did you do this? Why is like the worst word to start a sentence ever. And you know, you did this, you did that. So trying to use I statements, being careful with the way that we speak, using the proper language with them, but it's also important to communicate assertively. And this is with the in-laws as well. That it's usually not necessary to have a big, serious confrontation with the in-laws. We can really just discuss things and kind of come to an understanding. And so that's where number 6 comes along, is to set boundaries. And as a couple, you have to establish those clear boundaries. Negotiate and renegotiate them as you go along. Don't place in-laws in the middle. A lot of people do this. They're like, it's my mom, just talk to her directly. Or the couple is having a fight and they involve the in-laws. Try to deal with things on your own. Try to discuss them between the two of you, behind closed doors. Figure it out together. If things are really bad, go to a therapist, right? That's where you'll go sit with somebody who is a professional, especially a couples therapist, right? Because there are different specialties as well among therapists. So you go to a couples therapist to really sit and get the outsider's perspective, and it being a professional, on what's going on in your marriage. So there's not only the physical space, but there's the emotional space. So the emotional boundaries as well. Saying that this was hurtful to me, or can you please not say this, or can you please not do this? Setting those boundaries, it's not easy. And I'm sure a lot of people may be thinking like, okay, well, that's not so easy, or the other person doesn't even want to listen. And there are different strategies that you can use that I don't have the time to go over now, but different strategies of really how to communicate and to set those boundaries with your in-laws. And the last one is number 7, and this is remembering that nobody can interfere or influence your marriage unless you allow them to. And so when you put your marriage first, that husband and wife, we are first. Yes, we respect our parents. We love them. We're there for them. We support them. We help them. But we're really trying to make this marriage work, because this is the new foundation of our home. They had their time of when they got married, and they focused on building that foundation to where they are. And so it's working on the foundation so you can grow for the coming years. So setting reasonable boundaries, and if somebody cannot be spoken to, if somebody is not respecting you, that's where it's important to reach out for help. Because I want to make a special note that in-law abuse is a real thing, right? Abuse can take place from anyone. Physical abuse, emotional, psychological abuse. And there's so many people who are being abused by their in-laws, and they don't realize it, right? It's been going on for a really long time. or it started off very small and slowly and just kept building and building and building. I've worked with many people who have been absolutely broken psychologically, emotionally by their in-laws, in the sense that they had this negative, critical voice from a mother-in-law or father-in-law or sister-in-law, and it became their inner voice over years of hearing this negativity. Oh, you shouldn't cook that way. Oh, why are you going out now? Oh, but your kids are going to be left alone. Who's going to watch them? Oh, but that color doesn't look good on you. Don't wear that next time. These little things that we think are little things, but they add up and they build up. And now this critical, negative voice has become your inner voice. And to change that inner voice from critical to compassionate, it takes a lot of work in therapy. It's not impossible, because nothing is impossible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it takes a lot of work. So recognize, try to take a step back and see if that's what's going on with you, and reach out for help, because it's not okay. Just because they have that position of respect and honor, it's not okay for them to mistreat you. It's not okay for them to put you down, to constantly criticize you, to be negative towards you. So that's something to keep in mind. And the ultimate message, and I was listening to, it's on YouTube, Dr. Farjana Khan, she talks about the narcissistic mother-in-law. If anybody's interested in this topic, I would definitely recommend listening to it. And she talks about how the ultimate message for everyone is to have that compassion and empathy for yourself. Because if you're in a tumultuous relationship with an in-law, it can be very draining and very difficult. And at the end, it's so essential for you to have that compassion for yourself, and to not take everything that they do and blame it on yourself. That if they don't like your cooking, or they don't like, the job that you have, or they don't like, what you're doing and how you raise your kids and the choices that you make, that doesn't necessarily, and that doesn't reflect poorly on you. So it's not taking it personally, giving them the benefit of the doubt, giving them 70 excuses, and just trying to move on with your life in the way that you want to live it. So I hope that that was helpful, inshallah, and I hope that we do have time for some question and answers in the end. I did put my business cards on that back table, so you're welcome to, when you're leaving, to pick it up. I have my email and my cell phone number on there. You can text me any questions, any concerns whatsoever. I offer individual, couple, and family therapy to anyone in the state of New York, in person on Long Island, and online to anybody who's in the state of New York. And I offer coaching. If you want to know the difference, you can text me to find out, but I offer coaching to anybody in the entire US, inshallah. جزاك الله خيرا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين